Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everyone. I'm Carey Conley, your host of the Moving Through and Beyond podcast, and I get the honor of bringing on some amazing people that I've met through my walk and through my journey of life. And this is a woman that I think maybe even just live and in person, we've met one time, right?
Correct.
The rest of it's just been through Zoom and all the virtual stuff. So I'm honored to have you here, Lark, and to share your story. Truly, truly honored.
Thank you. And I know that we share so much with regards to our story.
Yes, for sure. So I always like to just start out by having my guests kind of just share a little bit about your background, your upbringing, what that looked like. And you have a very interesting childhood that I know you share in your book, Learning to Breathe Again, right?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. What's interesting is that when I started to write this book, I had no intention of talking about my childhood. And a schoolmate from back in teenage years, she said, "You're going to talk about your childhood, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Why would I talk about that? That's awful."
Yeah.
And she said, "No, you need to share that." And it was so good because grew up with an undiagnosed bipolar father, so mental illness. And what that created was a lot of instability in our family. We moved every year of my life. It was just what we did. And different school, you can imagine how that is. My dad just was adventurous and couldn't hold still. And so there was a lot of poverty. We really didn't have a lot. There were times I can remember where we barely had any food. I remember my mother would go and give platelets to earn a couple extra dollars so that we could have food. And how grateful I am for the sacrifices of my mom. And
wow.
When I wrote that chapter about my growing up, though, it helped me understand my father, who died by suicide back in 2014. And it helped me understand why I parented like I did, because I was trying to balance out this huge instability in my life. So I almost went, to the other extreme, creating too much rigor and structure. And that was kind of hard on my kids, especially my son.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading the stories of your childhood and all the places you went and all the places you lived. And it's crazy that you came out on the other side.
And I didn't think it was crazy, because when you're in it, that's normal, right? And it wasn't until people were talking to me and they're going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, that's so awful." And I'm like, well, my dad made it an adventure. You can imagine, bipolar. There was a lot of adventure. So
right. Is your mom still alive?
Yep, she is still alive.
Mm-hmm. How is she?
She is doing well. She also was a little bit traumatized through being married to my dad. They divorced when I was 16, and it was on and off between the years of 8 and 16. They were together and separated for 8 years. And I think as kids, we knew that divorce was inevitable.
Right.
And when they finally did divorce, I think all the kids were like, "Oh, hallelujah, let's get off the crazy train and try to create stability." But my mother kind of just rolled with it. She had 7 kids. Okay, do the math, age 5 and under. I was the oldest at 5. The last 3 are identical triplet girls. So I do not know how she survived that. Yeah. Those of us with 1 or 2 or 3, we're like, "Oh my gosh, how did you do 7? And how did you do it so quickly?" She's a saint. She just rolled with it. So
she definitely is a saint. My God. All right. So you're in Utah, correct?
I am in Utah. Yes.
Yeah. And have quite the education.
You know what? Well, thank you. I have a master's in economics, undergrad in political science. I was dead set on that I was going to get out of poverty.
Yeah.
And growing up, I was like, I am going to find a way to get out of poverty. And if it's education, and I put myself through school. I did get a couple of scholarships, and I lived at home, but literally that was the focus. I was going to find a way to get out of poverty. And so for most of my life, I'm going to say I really focused on the job, the career. I had a very high level career, and trying to create some stability and provide things for my kids that would help them. And
Right.
that would look like different classes, different sports opportunity, different music opportunities, all the things that I didn't feel like I had.
Yeah.
And so while I did it with with some good intention, I
Mhm.
also did it with, very like, we're going to take on the world and we're going to do it. And kids fall in line because you better get on mom's schedule.
Yeah. Gotcha. Um, and I know recently you just sold a business, correct?
Right. So I inherited my father's trucking business when he passed away, and I had a partner, and then I was working on that. I streamlined it. I was working about 1 hour a week with it, and then we had some employee issues through the COVID, and I was having to spend more time, and that's just not where my heart was. My
Yeah.
heart is in doing some other work, and so my partner, it was the right time. It was He bought me out, and it was perfect timing for both of us. And
Yeah.
at first I was, being my father's business, I was thinking, how do I feel emotionally about losing this tie to my father? And I thought, no, he would support me in being able to do this so that I can have an income to support me as I go out and talk about suicide prevention and make this a really big core of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. This is unfortunately the tie that Lark and I have, everyone, is that we have both lost sons to suicide.
Mhm.
And now we're on a mission of suicide awareness and prevention. And it's just, and I know this breaks your heart as much as it does for me, Lark, that those numbers are creeping every day. Um, and something just has to be done. So I applaud you for taking that leap and wanting to do something. And so you lost your son. How old was he? What year was that?
He was 19, it was 2019, and so we just passed the 4 year mark.
Yeah.
And I look back to where I was 4 years ago, not knowing if I would survive, if the rest of my family would survive. It was so devastating.
Yeah.
It's been hard. It's not been easy. There are days that are harder than others. I'm not going to say that time heals the wounds, but I will
Right.
say that time helps you have a better perspective.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is, I think, the thing you talked quite a lot about in the book that you just mentioned when we started talking, that looking back, you would have done things differently, right? Maybe had a different
Yes.
relationship or parented differently. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. As you probably get the idea, I was very structured. My husband was military. We were a very fall in line family. We expected that the kids, they represent us. When they walk out that door, they better be the best. They better be the best student. They better perform to their best of their abilities. They better not get in trouble. All of these things, right? And there were to be no problems in the family.
Right.
I look back now and I think, oh my goodness,
Hmm.
my role as a parent, I no longer see as the disciplinarian or the enforcer. I now see my role as just to love and support my children.
Hmm.
And that's what I feel like I'm here for, because kids are, regardless of what we think and do as parents, they are going to do what they are going to do, and they are going to
Hmm.
walk their own path, right?
Yeah.
So, my youngest is now 22, but still, as adult kids, they make decisions or they do things that I'm thinking, I probably wouldn't have done that. And there might be times when I give them my advice, but I just leave it there. And I'm like, whatever you do, that's you. It's your life, and I'm here to support you.
Right.
And I just don't have that weight of that perfectionist weight on my shoulders anymore,
Hmm.
that I have to be a certain kind of person or my kids have to be a certain kind of person. I'm just like, man, you just do whatever you want over there. We're all good.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think it takes this kind of a tragedy for us to kind of wake up and break open
Mhm.
and make the change we need to make. And I know, especially in the instance of suicide, there can be so much guilt,
Yes, yes. And
right?
you know what? Especially because my son and I fought like every day of our lives. He
Wow.
was a difficult child for me. And somebody asked, well, why was he difficult? I'm like, because he liked to argue. Now, I called it arguing. He called it, having an open discussion. But at some point, it gets exhausting, when I'm trying to say, hey, son, will you take the trash out? And then there's a 20-minute discussion about why he should not have to take the trash out.
Yeah.
And his sisters are yelling at him, just take the trash out. So, it's one of those things that I look back and I think, was he really that hard of a child? And I can remember a time when he was about 7, and I asked a sister of mine. She had 5 kids that were age 8 and under. The youngest 2 were twin girls that were 2. And I said, I will trade you one son, my son Christian, for all 5 of your kids for one day. She wouldn't do it. So I want to just tell people, he was a hard kid for me. He was brilliant. There was nothing he couldn't get into. Do you know what I mean? And
Yes.
take apart. And his mind was so inquisitive. And that was what was hard, is that we did not see that he was struggling.
Yeah.
And therein lies the guilt, right? As
Yes.
a parent, it's like, why didn't I see? Why didn't I know? Why wasn't I enough?
Yeah.
Why did he do this?
Right. Yeah, girl, spin down that path and still struggle with that every once in a while. But as you said a minute ago, you don't heal, you just change your perspective on things. My son on the flip side was pure joy from day one.
Oh,
just totally like my little, kind of like my soulmate, Lark. I mean, we just got each other. He was just a joy for me to be around, and just lit up the room, and it was amazing. And so, for me, there was no conflict. There was just knowing that towards, the last 2 weeks of his life were a struggle. He was struggling, and we knew it. And he moved back in with me for a little while, was making some choices to possibly leave his job because he wasn't happy there. Job he probably never should have done. Again, guilt. Should have seen it.
Yeah.
Everything is so much clearer. Hindsight's 2020.
Oh, yes, exactly.
But never thought he would take this step, especially after what we went through, losing his dad to suicide.
And yet what I want people to understand is that when there's a family member who takes their life, the rest of the family increases their risk of suicide by 50%.
Yeah.
And so even though I had talked to my kids about my father's taking his life, and even though I had explained how difficult that was, with the hopes that of course they would never do this,
right.
That then becomes an option in the back of their heads. It's now on the table. And that just broke my heart. I'm like, let's take that option off the table. There are other ways that we can help you.
Right. And, I should have thought about that too, but I think a big part of me was in denial about that. No, this is not going to happen again. I mean, he knew how devastating it was. So this is not going to happen again. God would not let this happen to me again.
Yeah. Because, we're already having a dumpster fire, let alone, just like the world's burning down.
Right. So, yeah. So shocking. So what helped you, Lark, get through the first few months, years?
So I'm going to say, when he passed away, the thought that kept coming to me was that he hates me. He hates me. I'm a terrible mom. And I had 3 people that first week come to me and say, I have a message from your son. And I'm like, all right, I'm open. And all 3 of them said, tell my mother that I love her. And so over the course of the next weeks and months, my heart started to soften. And that was really important. And just this love that I started to feel for him. The other thing that happened was 3 moms reached out to me, 3 moms with teenage kids who knew my son. And these kids had been struggling. They had attempted, or they were talking about attempting, or they were on actual suicide watch. And the moms expressed concern for me, but also for their own children, because you're familiar with copycat suicide, right? Especially amongst teens. And if you had told me 4 years ago that you're going to be talking about this, you're going to write a book, you're going to be like everywhere with suicide prevention, I would have said, oh no. Because when my father died, I couldn't even say the word. I went into a dark hole.
Yeah.
And I started to go there with my son's death until these women started to reach out to me. And I began to realize this is not about my son. It's not about me as a parent. This is about these children.
Right.
And while I cannot control whether or not they take their lives, what can I control? I can only control myself. And if I choose not to speak up and something happens to these kids, how can I live with myself?
Right.
And that's kind of what it tipped it over, is that I didn't speak for me. I spoke for every other parent out there,
Yeah.
with the hopes that no other parent would have to go through what we went through. Because let me tell you that losing a child, you are completely unprepared for that, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, the element of suicide, if you think losing a child is bad, that whole element of suicide and why wasn't I enough and why didn't I see that just puts, the cherry on top. That's just
Right.
awful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I'm choosing to launch this podcast to have it go live like around Mother's Day.
Oh, yes.
Most especially because, for us now, Mother's Day is not such a joyful day. Right.
It's a hard day sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that it'll be somewhat of some encouragement for people to be listening to you and I, and knowing that we've been through the worst of the worst and how we got through it, what helped us get through it, and how we're doing now. And like you, this I think is one of the biggest connections you and I have is I am very aware that my son is very much with me all the time.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And like you, I had random people just start showing up going, hey, I just want you to know. Yeah, that
Yep.
here's some messages that your son and your husband have for you. Just random at random times.
Yes, it's not like you go out looking for it. People just come and you're like, okay.
Yeah. And out of everything that I have done, counseling, which I've done about that much of, having friends around me, running my business, all the stuff that helped me, the biggest thing that has helped me have been all these messages that I've gotten from people making it very clear to me that he is here. This was unfortunately a part of the grander plan. As much as it really, really hurts.
Sucks. Yes.
And knowing, having a faith that this time that without him is like a nanosecond, and we'll all be together. And
Yep. And it still makes it hard, even though we feel these things, it still makes it hard, but there is hope. And without that hope, I don't know how somebody could go on, right?
I've said this many, many times, people who don't have that faith of knowing there is something bigger.
Yes.
And that they are very much energetically around. I get signs all the time, especially when I ask for them.
And I spoke to two mothers just recently who lost a child, one by suicide and one in a car accident. And I tell them, I'm like, your child is still with you.
Right.
You need to be aware. You need to pay attention because they are there and you are going to miss, the signs that they are trying to send you.
Right.
You need to have faith that they have that ability, and you need to be aware and recognize it. Because I've had some very intense interaction with my son since he passed away, just one-on-one even.
Interesting.
And I know he's there, you know, and he has let me know that suicide has not damned him in any way. He's still very much there. He's still trying to help other people who are struggling with this.
Yeah.
And that he's kind of got his own life mission. He's doing his thing.
Yes. And this is, we could talk about this for hours because I've learned a lot about this if you would have asked me 10 years ago before all of this, about some of the stuff we're talking about right now, I would have gone,
oh no. On. Before my son died, woo-woo, all of that did not exist. Now, I'm a very spiritual person. I feel connected to God, but the spiritual level is over there.
Yeah.
And now it's all around us.
Right. Yes. So I'm learning to just really be more patient with myself, like you, very, very driven by nature, Lark.
But you know what? In going through these experiences, I think I have learned grace for myself, grace for other people. Slow down. We don't need to burn the world tomorrow. Like we can just find the things that God would have us do and focus on that. And the whole point is that we're all connected and that we're here to help each other.
Right.
And we can't do it without each other. We can't.
Exactly. And not only us here, but them there. It is,
Yes.
yes. I've learned a lot about that, about how much they are really trying to get our attention and trying to work through
Mhm.
us.
Yes, absolutely.
Like your son, they're probably collaborating as we speak, Lark.
I know. I know, they're
Yeah.
thinking, okay, our moms are going to talk today. What can we do?
Yeah, exactly. And the same message. It's interesting that you brought up the word grace because you're my like my fifth podcast recording today, and every single one, just about everyone today, we've
Mhm.
all talked about grace.
Yes.
About
Seriously, you just have to do that because when you're very driven, I can remember thinking I would not give grace or I would not allow other people their excuses. You will show up, you will be 100%, you will do this and this and this. I don't care if you are sick, or I don't care if you this or that or that. And now I'm like, hey man, it's all going to come together. It's
yeah,
good. We're fine. It will work out.
yeah,
I'm
it
not driving the car anymore.
yeah. Jesus take the wheel, right? It's like just along for the ride.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's interesting that to try and be in the passenger seat when I've been the driver for so long
Yeah. Yeah.
requires a whole new level of
Yes.
detachment from identity,
Yeah. Yep.
detachment from what I thought was important, or
Oh,
the achievements that I really wanted even a year ago.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? And that's the one thing I've looked at is a friend of mine was reading my book and she said, well, Lark, you didn't put like any of your, I'm going to call them worldly acclaim, your schooling or what you've done in your career or anything like that. And I said, I will tell you this because everything that I have done doesn't matter.
Right.
All of those achievements, they don't matter. I
Right.
don't care about those things. I care about connecting with people, trying to help people understand that they matter and that they have a special thing that only they can do. And if they choose to, take their life, then we're going to miss them because we need them. And
Right.
that's really all I care about anymore.
Right. Exactly. So what's happening in your life now? What are you working on?
So I am working on a couple of things. I've been trying to figure out, after I launched my book, okay, where am I going? What's happening? And now I have decided to help women like I was, 20, 25 years ago, very driven women who are taking on the world, but maybe at the expense of their mental health and maybe at the
Right.
expense of their children, and helping them get their lives in balance. I've been able to achieve a lot of things, but I think we can still have those achievements with in a balanced environment and
Yeah.
not with all the stress and push that we've done before. So this is something that I'm kind of noodling around with and saying, I feel really good about this.
Yeah.
So
Do some of those women that you're working with, Lark, I'm just curious about this because this has started happening for me and I'm sure it has for you when you're out speaking. Do they come to you and they talk about how they're not feeling fulfilled and they're worried about their own kids following the same path? Um,
sometimes they do talk about that, and sometimes they're just like, I'm worried for the mental health. What's the direction for the kids?
yeah.
And more I'm seeing from moms that the majority of kids are struggling.
Yes.
They are.
Yep. This is what keeps me up at night now, Lark.
Mhm. Yes.
Literally. Because you and I both know that's not turning around
No.
at this moment, although I hope to be a big part of helping turn that trajectory.
Mhm.
Um,
And that's what I say.
really,
If you've impacted one life, you've
right,
changed the world because of all those ripple effects.
right,
And so we just get up in the morning, do what we can, maybe make an impact on someone, even if it's like you're out in the grocery store and you smile at someone, or
right.
you have a kind word, or you look someone in the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
These small things acknowledge that the other person is there, that they matter, that you can connect with them.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be, this huge epic thing that you think you're changing the whole world. Changing an interaction can change
Yeah.
the world.
So right on. I had a woman reach out to me, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. I don't even truly, honestly remember when we met. And I think it was probably just one time at a networking event. But she reached out to me and said, and I'm sure you get this, hey, I've got a son that's really struggling. We're helping him all we can, but I don't know what to do. Do you have any resources? Would you be willing to talk to us? Whatever. So I did get on a call with her and her son. And, it's the typical scenario of what's happening right now. He's 30 years old. He's still living at home. He has an education. He's getting a job offer now, but he's not loving this place where he's supposed to go work. And he's just feeling like he's made like all the wrong decisions. And if he makes another wrong decision, it's just going to be detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that changing anytime soon unless we really change how we're raising up our kids and how we're educating them.
Exactly. And it's kind of the whole system. And so I think sometimes, I applaud the parents who make radical changes in their families' lives to support
Yes.
their kids in the way they need to be educated, or the direction, or maybe, off social media, or moving to a more rural environment, because it is a matter of our children's lives. That's
Right.
what it comes down to.
Yes, really. I saw some statistics somewhere from the other day that one of the biggest things they're struggling with the most is loneliness.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a world where everyone's connected with social media and with their phones, etc., they are completely isolated, is how they really feel.
Right.
And I will say, I saw statistics that since 2010, when the smartphone was introduced, suicides have increased, in as early as 10-year-olds,
Yeah.
both males and females, 10 years old up through 18 is what the statistics I was looking at,
Yeah.
increased dramatically.
Right.
And so at that point, parents you've got to look at it seriously and say, do I want to put my child's mental health at risk, even though my 12-year-old is begging me for a smartphone so she
Yeah.
can be like all the other friends she has?
Yeah. Tough battle.
Yes.
Yeah. I now have grandchildren, Lark. I don't know if you do yet.
I do, yes. And I saw your cute little grandkids.
Yeah. So I worry more about my grandkids than I ever did about my own kids.
Yep. Exactly. And that's the thing too, I try to explain to parents, let's say our generation, right? When something happened to you at school, junior high or high school, how many people knew about your most embarrassing moment at school?
Right.
Maybe 5, right?
If even that.
Kids nowadays, 1,000.
Right.
Or more, right? Through social media. And so in their minds, their life is over, because they're thinking their life as they know it is over. And so how do we as parents help our children have a sense of worth, that they can understand that what happens outside, or what happens, what other people say or things like that, that's not who their worth is.
Right.
And that is a hard battle.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, I just number one, I'm just honored that you are willing to be so transparent and share your story, especially talking a lot about, this is not easy for us to do as parents, talk about the things that we would have done differently.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Because we're not here trying to be on the pedestal and say, oh, things were great, and suddenly poof. No, they weren't great. I wish I had done something different. And I'm willing to share that, because I care so much that other people don't go through this. Don't make the same mistakes. We've already made the mistakes.
Yeah.
Let us just help you through this.
Yeah, for sure. So just any last little parting words as we're wrapping up, especially talking to the parents who have lost a child, that maybe one little encouragement or one more tip you can give them.
Well, I will tell you this. I've learned the secret of life. If you'd like to know,
Please.
The secret of life, it's love. Like, honestly, all you need is love. It just comes down to love. Love everyone around you.
Yeah.
Just show a lot of love. That's it. That's all it is. And if you can do that, if you can have love for yourself, love for everyone else, it will work out.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, and this is what I've learned in giving myself more grace, is to allow other people to love you.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes. Bring that love in, because like I said, we are connected and we need to feel that. We're human beings. We need to be, not do.
Yeah.
Be. We need to feel that love and go through life accordingly, and just reevaluate everything we think is important, and take a step back and say, in the grand scheme of things, does XYZ really matter? Or is it my relationship with this person that is more important?
So true. And your relationship with yourself as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Because you've got yourself, and that's pretty much, even when
that's
you're
it.
alone, you're with yourself.
That's exactly right. Well, tell us the title of your book again so they
So
can
it's
find
called,
you, Lark.
sure, it's on Amazon. It's called Learning to Breathe
To breathe
Again.
again. Yeah.
Choosing to heal after losing a loved one to suicide. And I will say, it's not just for people who have lost a child. If you're grieving, it's great to help you get through the grief. If you're struggling in your relationship with your child, it's good to get a new perspective on maybe parenting
Right.
before and parenting after, how I see parenting now.
Well, I think the direction you're going in to help these women, because there's a lot of them, is just feels so right.
Mhm. Thank you. I really do too. So
Yeah.
I've
Well,
been guided by my son, so I feel like
yes, and there's that. And when you get those direct messages,
yes,
you gotta pay attention.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking this time to talk to me today, and I'm hoping that you and I just have given somebody some encouragement. So
Yes.
thank you. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Carey.
you.
Thank you. I
All right,
appreciate you too.
everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond. I am just here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.